Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Philip. Good to be back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the last weekend of fights. A lot to get to, a lot to unpack, and it's a pleasure to be back. So let's just have a nice, real fast, aggressive start and get into it. Starting off with Who's That Fighter? Now, normally this segment is Who's That Boxer? This is a boxing program, but I would be remiss if I did not at least spend a portion of the show today talking about one of the greatest fighters of all time and one of the best fighters of this generation, Alexander Volkanovski. Again, if you don't want to hear about this, go to the time card. You can skip ahead, but I have to devote a few minutes here just talking about the accomplishment Alexander Volkanovski had over the weekend. If you're not aware, at UFC 314 in Miami, Florida, Alexander Volkanovski became featherweight champion of the world once again, defeating Diego Lopez by unanimous decision, winning 4 rounds to 1 on 2 scorecards and 3 rounds to 2 on the other. He is now the first man ever in UFC history to capture a world title past the age of 35 in the weight classes of lightweight and below. It has never been done before. He is also the first fighter in UFC history to capture an undisputed UFC title after 2 back-to-back losses. There have only been about 6 men, according to what I can find, that have gotten a title fight off of 2 losses, and Volkanovski is essentially the only man to win an undisputed world title following 2 back-to-back losses. The fact that he's still super elite, his reflexes, even at 36 years of age, are still there. He's one of the most technically advanced and strategically evolved fighters I think the sport of MMA has ever seen and will ever see. He's really remarkable as a fighter. Even if you're just purely a boxing fan, I implore you, watch the third Max Holloway fight, and you will see one of the greatest ever to do it. His timing, his range control, everything about him is remarkable to be able to watch. And the fact that he basically upset Father Time here and turned back the clock in an excellent performance against a young, hungry contender in Diego Lopez, a man who was in his peak physical prime, looked larger than Volkanovski, was coming off of really good wins in the featherweight division. The fact that Volkanovski was able to handle that, had shaky moments, got dropped in the second round, got hurt pretty badly in the fourth, but to be able to push through that and just show that he's still an all-time great fighter and is super elite in the sport, he's phenomenal. And I wouldn't have felt right if I didn't say anything about him, even though this is boxing predominantly as a program. I had to give him some time, but let's move on here to the boxing of the weekend. Drawn Boots Ennis, Ennis Stanionis clashed in a welterweight unification bout in which I had predicted Drawn Ennis to win by 10th round knockout. He, of course, exceeded, I think, almost everyone's expectations, picking up a knockout win in the 6th round, which, if you had called that, congratulations, but predominantly speaking, I don't think anyone saw that result coming. However, a lot of people were also hedging on Ennis by decision. They put, in my opinion, too much stock in the Karen Chukadzian performances, and they felt, well, Stanionis is better than Chukadzian, and Ennis went the distance with him. Sadly, boxing math doesn't work, and I was proven ultimately to be very correct here. Again, predicting Ennis by stoppage. Imantis, his whole style predicated on pressure, coming forward with a high guard. What did I highlight on the last show? The body shots by Ennis, the uppercuts up the middle. All of that was just as available as I had foreseen. Great performance by Drawn Ennis. Again, getting it done much faster than I had predicted, but still, I think, holding up to a certain level of expectation. I did not see this fight as a 50-50. I did not think that Stanionis had that great of a chance, all things being considered. But again, that's not to take away from what Ennis did. He went out there and he proved that he truly is the best in class in the welterweight division. We have to see what his next move is, right? I mean, this is always the next point of contention. Where do you go from here? There's, of course, Brian Norman Jr., who I think is the only really remaining belt holder to take seriously here. Based on what I'm hearing, Mario Barrios is coming back in the summer. I'm not sure who that opponent will be. There's also still continuing talks of Mario Barrios to fight Manny Pacquiao at some point in the future. I think right now Mario Barrios is going to be able to hold that WBC title sort of hostage, so to speak, and I don't foresee him unifying with Ennis at all. But I think that a Brian Norman fight is achievable. Eddie Hearn has said that he is talking to Bob Arum to make that fight happen. And I think that Ennis, I know he wants to be undisputed in every weight class, but if he goes from Ennis Stanionis to most likely Jerome Boots Ennis will have to face another man who fought on this card, that being Shakram Gyasov. But if he does get through that fight, Brian Norman gets through his next fight against who looks to be Jin Sasaki, we could very well likely see a 3-belt unification, hopefully fourth quarter of this year, maybe first quarter of next year. But if that doesn't happen, Jerron Ennis should move up to 154 pounds. Super welterweight is arguably a top 3 weight class in the entire sport right now. You have Virgil Ortiz, you have Tim Tszyu, Bakram Mirzataliev, you have Jermell Charlo is out there. So many names, so many choices to pick from. I think right now the problem with Boots is, who does he fight? What's a actual legitimate opponent for him? And there is just no chance you run into that problem at 154 pounds. Even the guys that are circling outside of the top 25, 30 at super welter would be a good fight, a good test for Ennis, who has never moved up a weight class to this point in his career, and it would be a new experience for him. The only other, I guess, sort of calculation is, right now we're seeing Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney. Those two are in and around the 147-pound division. Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney are going to fight later on this year, provided they both win their next bout. It's possible that Ennis would want to fight the winner. Let's say Ennis versus a Ryan Garcia, if Garcia could beat Haney. I'm not so sure about that. I think Ennis is more concerned about legacy. And even though he did say that he made the weight easily, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. I think a lot of these predictions are predicated on needing a lot more information than we currently have. But more than likely, Ennis will have to face Shakram Gyasov next. Gyasov now has been taking a lot of step-aside money not to be fighting for a world title. He was featured on the undercard, which we'll get to in a moment. But he is mandatory. He will be more than likely enforcing that mandatory. And I think that it's a perfectly good fight to have for Jerron Ennis while he waits for a bigger fight to happen. So we'll have to see about that. Moving on here, Raymond Ford beats Thomas Matisse by a dominant unanimous this should actually be purple according to my system, but that's okay. Yeah, pretty much exactly what I predicted. I didn't really think Matisse would have any success in this fight. Ford, just too young, too sharp, too good all around. We'll have to see what's next for him. I mean, there's not too much to say about this fight. It was not that amazing of a performance beyond, dominating every round, but we'll have to see. I think Eddie Hearn is ready to put Ford back at the world title level. He has basically two options. This is for the WBA Continental title. Of course, the WBA title holder in this division is Lamont Roach. I don't think that that's happening at all. But provided Lamont Roach vacates his title, Albert Batagaziv would be upgraded to full champion. That's a potential matchup. But the one that seems to be in discussion more is the winner between Sugar Nunez and Masanori Rikishi, who are fighting for the vacant IBF world title later on this year. It's more than likely that we could see Ford fight for that title, and it would be interesting to see how the IBF rehydration clause could maybe hamper a performance from Ford. But I'm not so sure that he would beat the winner of that fight, but it is a good one, and it would be good to see him back at the world title level. Moving on here, Cardenas. So originally he was fighting this gentleman here, Carto. He had a late notice replacement opponent against Edgar Joe Cortez. And I don't want to talk too much about this guy, but I thought his ceiling was a little bit higher. I'm not so sure about him. I think he's very beatable. But we'll have to see. Good enough performance. But I do want to move on here to Shakram Gasov. I predicted Shakram Gasov to stop Franco Maximiliano Ocampo. Ocampo, a pretty durable guy out of Argentina, had never been stopped before. And yeah, I know that he had never been stopped before, but Shakram Gasov went out there and he really showed the difference between the Argentinian club show level and the world title level. He looked phenomenal in this fight. One of the best Shakram Gasov performances that we've seen, I think, in quite a while. I liked everything about him, his punch selection, his willingness to exchange and know that he had the power to really hurt this guy. Really good performance by him. And of course, it should be stated over and over, this man just lost his infant daughter, or his newborn daughter, in the weeks coming into this fight. It would have been perfectly understandable if he did not fight at all. It even would have been understandable if he didn't have a good performance, if this had plagued his mind too much. But Gasov is a stronger man than many, was able to push through and picked up a win for not only his sake, but his daughter's. You know, he said in the post-fight interview that he promised his daughter that he will be world champion, and you can only hope the best for the guy. Yeah, hats off to Shakram Gasov. And so moving on from some pretty good results here, let's get to this card that happened over in the Casino de Montreal in Quebec. Over the weekend, we saw Dimitri Asanau take on a very sturdy test in Francisco Patera. Yeah, I went with Asanau by majority decision. This worked out to be a shutout. I really thought that Patera would be a little bit more competitive here. I've seen some defensive lapses from Dimitri before, but this was a very low output fight that Dimitri just controlled the entire time. Patera basically had zero moments. It was not a good watch, if I'm being even more brutally honest. I did have a hard time finishing the fight from start to end, but this is a good win by a man with less than 10 fights against a guy in Patera who's been sturdy at the lightweight division. So good performance from a dominance point of view, but could have been much more dynamic. Moving on here. So Christopher Guerrero, who I'm very high on, I had picked him to knock out Oliver Quintana, but credit to Quintana, toughed it out, stayed in there, won a round or so, but Guerrero controlled the distance, controlled the action. Good performance by him, but again, this is at a certain level. We'll have to see where he goes from here, but I did like what I saw, and I'm curious to watch him again. Mary Spencer taking on Osglazis Suarez for the WBA Super Welterweight title. I picked her by unanimous decision. I figured she wasn't going to get the knockout, but she was going to be leagues better than her opponent. That is what transpired. Good performance by Mary Spencer, but I think that even in the female Super Welterweight division, I think she is very, very beatable. If you look at some of her contemporaries here, just to go through them, yeah, you have Cecilia Brecas, who I would favor to beat her. O'Shea Jones, I think, would beat Mary Spencer. Even the girls I think the girls at welterweight right now all beat her. I think Michaela Mayer would beat her. I think Lauren Price would absolutely beat her. But we'll have to see. I mean, Mary Spencer, I don't think that she is the youngest fighter in the world. Yeah, she's 40 years old, but a good performance. It does enhance her legacy. She is a sort of unheralded champion, I think, in women's boxing. Good performance. Hello, what's going on here? Good performance. Moving on, John Orobio, a prospect that I am absurdly high on. He I predicted him to get a knockout here. I know that he had gone the distance once before, but I figured his opponent, Sebastian Aguirre, was going to fold at some point. But credit to him because he's stuck in that fight. I don't know how he was even able to take that much damage by John Orobio. And Orobio moves on and continues. What can you really say? It's not like he really lost any rounds or any moments of that fight. But I was expecting a knockout. I really was. Finally on this card, Alexandre Gaumont, who took on Mathis Lorenzo. Yeah, I've said a few times now, I think Gaumont doesn't really have the goods. I wasn't very high on him, but I did like this stoppage. I did like his punch selection against an opponent that I did think was going to be able to survive whatever Gaumont brought forward. Good performance, proved me wrong, and maybe it's time to start taking him a little bit more seriously. He is a middleweight. The middleweight division is quite shallow, and Canada does have some good middleweights to maybe test him against further down the line. Maybe we could see Alexandre Gaumont versus Patrice Volny later on in their careers. Interesting stuff. Moving on, we also had the first night of Cuban professional boxing, and I think over 50 or 60 years. And this was a very good card. Very good. Much better than the Canadian card, which did pleasantly surprise me. Of course, in your main event, Julio Cesar La Cruz, I had picked him by first round knockout. This did not go anything as to what I was predicting. I thought he was going to easily blow out Dylan Prasovic, but credit to Prasovic, knocked down La Cruz badly, really badly in round 2. La Cruz went on to gather himself, knocked down Prasovic later in that round, and stopped him in the 3rd round after knocking him down several times. What a war. What an awesome fight to watch live. And it's interesting to see what Julio Cesar La Cruz is going to do now. I believe that was for the WBA interim bridgerweight title or something like this. In all likelihood, he should fight Muslim Gajimagomedov next, who is the WBA bridgerweight champion. We're going to have to see. I'm not sure what the promotional arms are behind that fight, or if it'll be something as simple as just a WBA purse bid. But that remains to be seen. But what a fight. If you can find the highlight anywhere, if you've not seen it, I implore you, go look up Julio Cesar La Cruz versus Prasovic. You won't be disappointed. Very good fight. Also on this card, we saw the return of Arlen Lopez, another Cuban legend of the game. I had picked him to knock out his opponent, Martin Bulacio, who had been stopped several times before. But Bulacio was able to hang in there. This was a very, very low output fight. Arlen Lopez, in my real honest opinion, looked woefully out of shape for this. Did not look like he was in the best of condition, and was able to pick up a very pedestrian unanimous decision, but this was not an inspiring performance whatsoever. Also on this card, we saw the return of Lazaro Alvarez, who fought a fellow undefeated opponent in Miguel Quiles Santos. I thought that this was going to be not necessarily too tough of a test for Lazaro Alvarez, but again, he's not that experienced as a pro, only 7 pro fights now. I wasn't sure how he would handle a fellow unbeaten fighter that seemed to be at least pretty decent, and credit to him because he got Miguel Santos out of there in the 8th round. Good performance by him. And again, hopefully with all these guys, they keep them active, because when you're older, you've got the Cuban style, which is just the most overstated thing of all time. Yes, Cubans have a certain style, but it's not like some make or break thing. But in any case, good win. Keep him active. I'm curious to see where they can take him. All right. For this next opponent, we really need to have a conversation here, because Irislandi Alvarez is going to be a future world champion and potentially a future star of the sport. I had picked him to win by knockout in the 4th round. He knocked his opponent out in the 1st round. Now again, his opponent wasn't anything too crazy, but a solid record of 21-5-1, who is coming off of a couple of wins in a row. But Erislandi Alvarez, the Cuban gold medalist from the last Olympics, he is must-watch TV. Must-watch. He is, I think, now officially one of the best prospects in the sport. I think everyone in the super lightweight division, you have to know about this guy now. He is very, very good. And you only have two options with Erislandi Alvarez. You either realize how good he is now, or you wait to find out how wrong you were. He passes the eye test. He passes almost every metric of what you can with evaluating a new prospect. I think this gold medalist will go on to capture a world title. I don't think it's about if. I do think it's about when. The best performance on the card, bar none. Very good stuff. And finally, not Cuban, of course, but a decorated amateur in his own right, Mossa Gulman. I had picked him to win by knockout against Michel Vasquez. He picked up a third round stoppage. I thought the stoppage was a little bit odd. I didn't exactly agree with it, but I thought the writing was on the wall. I figured that he was going to get the win sooner or later. All right, some other fights that we had over the weekend. We saw the return of Pro Box TV. I'm very high on Jordan White. I figured he was going to pick over a stoppage over Romero, who has spent a big part of his career at lighter weight classes than lightweight. Wasn't able to find that stoppage, went to a decision. I think he won clearly, of course, but I was expecting a little bit better from Jordan White. Also on this card, Stephen Shaw versus Rafael Akipajori. I picked it. I don't know why I even went with third round knockout. I should have gone with the first round KO like it transpired, but I was thinking, well, maybe Shaw will be a little bit gun shy. Maybe, yeah. I know that Akipajori's record coming into this fight was 18 wins, just the one loss. That one loss being to Arslanbek Makhmudov. However, if you just watch the tape on Akipajori, I don't even understand how he has 17 wins by knockout. He doesn't have great punch mechanics at all. He overcommits on too many shots, and he basically is completely defensively neutered. I don't even know how to describe it. A very kill or be killed kind of fighter. And Stephen Shaw, I just figured, better amateur background, better wins as a pro, better pro performances. And yeah, he made a huge statement, knocking out Akipajori in the first round. Good stuff by him. And look, I used to be really high on Stephen Shaw. Obviously, following two losses back-to-back, I had to lower those expectations. But I do think that he is quite good. I am willing to re-embrace him as an American heavyweight contender. But we have to see where he goes from here. But hopefully this win inspires some confidence in him. Also on this card, the return of William Foster III. And again, a fight in which I figured that he was going to pick up a nice stoppage win. He goes to the distance. However, I would like to see Jordan White versus William Foster III. I think those are two lightweight contenders. Both men looking to really break out, get to that next level. I think that would be a good one. And the fact that they fought on the same card, they must have some promotional alignment. They're definitely on the same schedule. I think that would be a good matchup to move forward. All right, here we go. Here's the thumbnail. Let's get into the fights that are coming up this weekend. And of course, starting off, Liam Cameron versus Ben Whittaker, the rematch. Here we go. I rewatched the fight several times. I liked what I saw from Whittaker. I liked what I saw from Cameron. I think this will be a fight that has competitive moments. But if I really have to go with who I think will win, give me Ben Whittaker to win a unanimous decision, whether that is 10 rounds or 12 rounds, because up until this point, up until 5:46, April the 14th, we have no idea what this fight is. The contract was originally stipulated to be a 12-round bout. Ben Shalom then contacted Liam Cameron's team saying, sorry, that was a error by one of the people in our office. We, of course, meant to do 10 rounds. Cameron's retort is, you sent over a signed contract. You didn't read over this contract when you signed it. I signed it in return. This should be finalized. We should be fighting for 12 rounds, as it says. It's a terrible look on Ben Shalom's part. It's really odd that I don't think Ben Whittaker has made any kind of comment over this topic. I'm curious to see if he even cares whether or not it's 10 or 12 rounds. But I think he'll win. I really do. I know Liam Cameron was making it a dirty fight. I know that he was having really good moments before the whatever happened in that 5th round where they both went over the top rope. But I just can't shake the feeling that Ben Whittaker, so much younger, so much faster, I imagine that he'll win. I think what we're seeing in this fight that I've seen many times before, this isn't the first time, but when you have a B-side guy that comes in, looks much better than anyone was giving him credit for prior to the fight, I think all of a sudden, once he starts having success, people blow it out of proportion and start making claims that are just not true. I don't think that Cameron was easily winning or was absolutely going to stop Whittaker. The fight, yes, it had competitive spurts. It was getting really rough and rowdy. But I think Whittaker was handling himself fine. And I'm not so sure if the gas tank of Liam Cameron ultimately is this unshakable element. I'm not so sure that Cameron is always going to be able to get Whittaker into this dogfight. I mean, it doesn't remain to be seen. I can be proven wrong here. But I like so much of what Ben Whittaker was doing in there. I think now he's with Andy Lee, I believe, who is just a phenomenal trainer. Of course, one trainer over one new fight is not going to change everything. But in a fight like the first one, where I do think a couple of marginal adjustments, I think if Whittaker readjusts his defense, another thing is that I noticed while watching tape, Liam Cameron has very awkward timing. Now, I think a lot of people in boxing say awkward as a cop-out. I really do. I'm so tired of hearing everyone call someone, oh, he's awkward, he's got weird timing. Liam Cameron actually does have weird timing. He's not just... People will look at a bad fighter, someone that is just not elite, and go, oh, he's awkward. He's not awkward, he's bad. Liam Cameron, though, I think actually is a awkward timing fighter. He throws a 1, then pauses, then throws a 2. He'll look to land a jab, pause, look to see what you do, then go for a couple of body shots. He seems to be very aware that there are these split-second moments that he can capture to adjust and make changes accordingly. But I think Whittaker, if they've trained properly, if they analyze how Cameron moves, how he likes to decision make, I think they will find a path to victory here by unanimous decision. All right, that being said, let's move on here. Of course, we're also going to see the return of the big phrase Fraser Clark versus Ebenezer Tete, who just went 7 rounds with Dillian White in a historical comedy of a fight. I mean, that fight was just hilarity. But I'm expecting Fraser Clark to get a nice early TKO KO win here. Ebenezer Tete, his record is 23-2, which is good, but it's essentially 23 who, and the 2 British heavyweights that he fought, he got knocked out accordingly. I think Fraser Clark is quite good. I don't hold the loss against Fabio Wardley too poorly against him. I thought arguably if there was a winner in the first fight between Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley, I think Clark arguably is the only one that's a possible winner there. I think he's good. I really do. I rate amateur backgrounds, and I think he's got a darn good one. Give me him to knock out Tete. I don't foresee an upset here. I know that Clark, he got his jaw broken last time out, which is not good. But he seems to be in good spirits. He seems to be talking well. We'll just have to see if he does have any amount of gun shyness. But I think Tete will just, I think, fold a little bit easier than others might have you believe. Okay, this next fight between Lee Cutler and Sam Eggington. I have changed my pick about 4 times, but for the sake of moving on with my life, I have to make a final pick. And I'm going to go with Sam Eggington to stop Lee Cutler. I watched a couple of their... oh, darn it. Okay. I watched a couple of their last fights, and I think Lee Cutler's quite good, but I think Eggington is all wrong for him. Cutler, he's been adopting this new Philly shell. I think Eggington will be able to land hooks around the guard. And if you just look at their resumes here, Eggington has really only lost twice in the past few years. Both of them have been competitive, like majority decisions to guys like Abbas Barao, who are now fighting in IBF world title eliminators. That's not even anywhere close to the level that Lee Cutler has been fighting at. Give me Eggington here. I've got a sneaking suspicion that I know that the record's 15-1 versus 35-9 for Eggington, but I think Eggington has been on a different level. He's fringe world title level, which Lee Cutler is not. I'll pick him by knockout, but again, if Cutler wins this by being too crafty on the inside and too fast for Eggington, I totally understand that result as well, but I had to pick something here. And then finally, one of my favorite fighters, Tyler Denny, coming off of the loss against Hamza Shiraz at the Wembley card. He is fighting Elvis Abhoraga, and I'm favoring Tyler Denny here to win. A slightly competitive but overall dominant performance by Tyler Denny, who I still rate as one of the best middleweights in the UK. I think a nice competitive but strong showing here puts him right back into the mix. And then hopefully we can have, I don't know, anyone at the 160-pound division in the UK or in the greater European circuit more broadly. Let's get Tyler Denny back into big fights. I think he's a joy to watch. I really do. All right, let's move on here to someone that if you don't know, you should know at this point. A future pound for pound. I do think that she's already a pound for pound level star, but I really hope that she gets to the upper echelons of what boxing has to offer, especially in the female side of things. That, of course, being the one, the only, Gabriella Fundora, taking on a very sturdy test in Marilyn Badillo Amaya. So Fundora, 15-0, undisputed world flyweight champion, taking on 19-0-1 Marilyn Amaya. But I understand that Amaya is undefeated and that she is a highly rated contender, and I do think that she absolutely deserves this opportunity. But Fundora is something special. She's just got real punches, like a punch that will hurt you and stop you. And I've got to go for her to continue this. It's not quite a knockout streak, but a streak of excellent performances. Gabriella Fundora impresses me more each and every time she fights. Her last fight, knocking out Alanis, is just so impressive when you consider the run that Gabriella Alanis was on. Fundora is going to be the best female fighter in the world, and she's creeping up that list quicker and quicker with each performance. What can you say beyond, I expect her to go out there and do great things. Co-main event, Charles Conwell will be taking on a very tough test in the Mexican contender Jorge Garcia Perez, and this is a great fight. I don't want to hear it. If you don't know who Jorge Garcia Perez is, that's your fault, not mine. I understand his record is 32-4, so yes, he's been beaten before, but he is absolutely massive for 154 pounds, super long, very difficult style to deal with, coming off of a very good win over Kudratilo Abdurakhimov. Oh man, I hope I got that right. But yeah, good win by him. Charles Conwell also coming off of a very respectable win in his last fight as well. I think this is a great fight. Like I was saying before about 154 pounds for Germain Ennis. Again, winner of this fight would be excellent as a fight for Boots Ennis. Not that that's going to happen anytime soon. But Charles Conwell is really good, and he has really been impressing me with his run at Golden Boy. I think a win here would really solidify him as a future world title contender, and I'm going to back him. I'm going to say that Charles Conwell picks up a smart yet scrappy unanimous decision in which Garcia will have several moments. Garcia may even hurt Charles Conwell. I don't think that that's out of the possibility here. But Conwell, I think he'll find the way to win. I think it will be hard. I think he will actually be criticized heavily for this performance by those who do not understand the threat that Jorge Garcia Perez poses. But again, Perez quite good, has been taking on very good opposition. Got a few losses, sure, but I expect him to bring it. And an upset here would not shock me whatsoever. Let's move on to an offering by Matchroom Boxing. I'm going to keep this short and sweet here because I don't think the stakes of this card are too great. Of course, in the main event, we have Dalton Smith taking on Matthew Germain, who is a very solid contender in the 140-pound division out of Canada, a man who has not only beaten, but has had 2 fights with the great, oh my goodness, wait, hold on. Oh, come on. Can this thing work? But yeah, 2 great fights with the all-time great Canadian legend Steve Claggett. But the other part of this equation is that Matthew Germain has been stopped twice before. Dalton Smith at 140 pounds, I think if nothing else, is proven to be a very efficient finisher and quite a devastating puncher. I'm going to pick him here to win by knockout in the 6th round. It could be even earlier, but I do have a lot of respect for Germain. I think he is a good fighter out of Canada. But I think Dalton Smith, a man that has a world title opportunity at his fingertips, I think he'll understand that there is basically no room to slip up at this point in your career. You've got a world title fight on your doorstep. I imagine he'll go out there and he'll stop Matthew Germain. Even Eddie Hearn in other interviews this week has been talking about Dalton Smith versus the WBC world champion Alberto Puello, and I do think that will be next for Dalton Smith, provided he gets through this fight. Also on this card, this poster is wrong, but I couldn't find the updated poster, but Cuban Aguiarco, Calvin, I forget how the Irish say this name, Kelman Aguiarco, is taking on Ryan Kelly. Ryan Kelly, he's a decent enough fighter, coming off of an all right performance against a guy that I think is quite good, that being Kieran Conway. Has all right wins in his career, but I think Aguiarco, even getting this fight on very short notice, he had just fought, what was it, he had fought on March 30th, so he's getting this opportunity in less than a month, but that was a 8-rounder against a guy who was 3-1-2. It was a stay busy fight. I think Aguiarco has been really plagued by inactivity and not getting opportunities, and I think he'll shine in an opportunity like this. I am picking him by decision because he's not the biggest puncher in the world, but if he does get a stoppage, I wouldn't be surprised. It's just the late notice might be difficult to find that knockout there, but I expect him to look good. I expect him to dominate. Also on this card, the return of Josh Warrington. So Josh Warrington is taking on a man by the name of Asif Khan. Asif Khan, his last fight was against Mick Conlan. Hopefully, provided that Josh Warrington wins this fight and Mick Conlan wins his next fight, we could see that matchup later in the year. I think that would be a very good fight. And I expect Warrington to have a very similar performance to the one that Conlan had against Asif Khan, where he might drop a round or 2, but be able to win that fight in relative cruise control to get a unanimous decision win. Warrington, of course, coming off of 3 back-to-back losses, or back-to-back-to-back losses, I suppose. But I think this will be a confidence builder, but I do expect him to get through this level. Even in the fights that he's been losing, he's not looked terrible. He's not looked out of his depth. He's just not been good enough at that level, but this isn't that level, so he should get through. All right, final fight I want to talk about on this card. Josh Padley, the recent Matchroom signee, coming off of his loss to Shakur Stevenson just 2 months ago. He's back, taking on the undefeated Marko Svanatovic from Serbia. I understand that his opponent is 13-0 coming into this fight, but Svatovic's best win in his career is Viorel Simeon, who fought Shakur Stevenson back during the COVID days. But yeah, Josh Padley I think is actually quite good. I still rate his performance over Mark Chamberlain. I thought that was an excellent performance. And he didn't even look embarrassing in the Shakur Stevenson fight. He just, again, wasn't good enough, wasn't at that level. Give me Josh Pedley to pick up a nice unanimous decision. If he gets the stoppage, I would actually be very impressed, but I think he can win this fight quite comfortably. Moving on, we also have an offering by Box Lab Promotions. Every week is just going to be full of good stuff here. We have Lenier Perot on this card, a Cuban heavyweight who's taking on a man by the name of Detrelius Webster. I imagine he'll pick up a knockout very early. That tends to be what he does in his career. Also on this card, we have Henry Cedeño, who I thought that originally it was Yuri Cedeño on this card, but nope, it's Henry. I think he'll pick up a unanimous decision win over his opponent Hidalberto Umara, who had a split decision against another man on this card, that being Kevin Brown. However, Kevin Brown, I think his new opponent here in Estuary Suerio. Again, I'm not pretending to be an expert on any of these fights, but I did want to talk about it because, I mean, it's not like there's gigantic fights happening this weekend, but I imagine he'll win by stoppage. Also on this card, Christopher Pitufo Diaz, coming off of a loss against Henry Lebron. I imagine he'll pick up a unanimous decision here, get his confidence back, and hopefully look to land another big fight because apparently Pitufo Diaz still got it. He's still looking decent, and I expect him to win. And then also on this card, here is the one that really matters. Gurgen Hovhannisyan is taking on a man that has been featured on this channel once before, that being Dewan Calloway, who's coming off of his amazing upset victory over Thomas No Party Carty. However, as much as I would love the 400-pound heavyweight menace Dewan Calloway to continue his streak through the division, I got to go with Gurgen here by unanimous decision. I would love more than anything if Dewan Calloway can pick up another win over an undefeated prospect, but I think that Gurgen Hovhannisyan and Thomas Carty are worlds apart. Hovhannisyan has fought in the highest level of amateur tournaments against guys like Bakadir Jalalov. Thomas Carty was basically an Irish ticket seller. I don't compare them. I don't think that they're comparable whatsoever. I expect him to get an impressive and clear win, but hopefully Calloway makes it a fight. Two final things I'm going to highlight here before getting out of your hair and letting you go on with your day. Also on UFC Fight Pass, we have Sarerin Akhmedov taking on Elias Espadas. You might recognize Espadas. He's a man that has fought the Puerto Rican superstar Xander Zayas. And Espadas has been durable throughout his career, but he's been picking up a couple of knockout losses recently, and I think Sarerin Akhmedov will continue that streak with a 8th round stoppage over Espadas, and also the return of the Crusher, Sergey Kovalev, in the Crusher's farewell fight. He's taking on Artur Mann, and I imagine that Kovalev will get a unanimous decision win. I would love to pick knockout. I'm just not sure how much Kovalev really has left. But Artur Mann, 22-4 as a pro, and basically anytime he fought anyone of note, like a Mairis Briedis, he was beaten. I expect Kovalev to come out of this with a win. Maybe I should have gone with knockout, but I'm going to stick to my gut here, and I'm going to go by unanimous decision. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, especially comment. I want to hear from you. You know, if you don't want to like or subscribe, I guess you don't have to. I can't force you. But at least let me know what you thought. Let me know what I can improve on. Hopefully the pacing of this was all right. I tried to be a little bit more to the point here, not to have it run too long. But it's a pleasure always to do these predictions for you. I think I'm actually on quite a good streak. The last 3 weeks, lots of green, lots of purple. And hopefully we can keep that up and make some right predictions here. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week.